What we're going to do now is Rita Clark and I have the privilege and the honor of introducing to you two panelists here with us, two young people who we consider to be historical pioneers for a lot of different reasons. We're going to have them talk a little bit about themselves, their personal experiences, their social experiences at school and at home. That's our focus today, school and home. And it's really important to have that voice here with us today so that we can get a sense and some insights into what a young person goes through as they're coming up. And you really, if you talk to an LGBT who's an adult, they can also tell you their experiences, but they'd have to go back a long ways to remember. But these are young people that I'm personally proud of. I met the first panelist I'm going to introduce you to actually on a radio show. How many of you listen to the Charles Pugh Show on Sunday evenings, FM 98? And she and I happened to be on a radio show together to talk about her and her peers at Cass Tech High School starting the very first Detroit Public School Gay-Straight Alliance. I thought the day would never come. But she made me so proud, and I was so impressed by how articulate she was, how very calm she was, how she fielded the questions, how she responded to some of the crackpots that called in. I mean, she just stood firm. And I was just so pleased at how she and others made a decision, and they did it. And she can tell us a little bit about her struggles in getting to the point of having a GSA. So first, I want to introduce to you Denisha Ritchie, and then I'm going to introduce the next panelists. But let's give her some encouragement and some love here.
Thank you, Dr. Kofi. My name is Denisha Ritchie. I am a senior at Cass Tech High School and also a co-founder of the Cass Tech GSA. I just want to start by saying that I've known that I was attracted to women since I was 4 years old, and it took me a while. I didn't come out to my parents until just recently after moving out of their home, because I knew that there would be, you know, some discrimination toward me because my mom was very strict about male phone calls until I turned 16. But I knew that, and after talking to her, because she was just like, well, why didn't you tell me before? And I said to her, because I knew that she would say every female that called the house, she would think that I was dating or interested in being in a sexual relationship with her. And that's definitely, you know, one thing that I think people need to steer away from, is that because she had a misconception that because I was gay that I was attracted to every female that I saw, and it's certainly not that way. You know, just as, you know, a straight male isn't attracted to every female he sees, neither is a lesbian woman. We started the GSA at Cass Tech, and originally we went to Miss Bailey because we couldn't find a teacher who would sponsor the GSA. And Miss Bailey is the social worker at Cass Tech, and she said no, but for a set of reasons. And I definitely want to let you know that, you know, dealing with LGBT youth, you should definitely be prepared to be asked for support. And, you know, be prepared to give that support, because it's definitely helpful when you have somebody to back you and to sponsor you, because this woman wasn't, you know, it wasn't even majorly her beliefs, but it was her being worried about what people would think of her as the sponsor of, you know, this group. And so, and also we faced a lot of resistance from parents, and the vice principal told us that we couldn't have the GSA. And we found a teacher, Mr. Khan, to sponsor the GSA. And it took us we knew that for 5 years, there had been people every year trying to make this group, and it took us to get a letter from an attorney telling her that we had the right, and that if she denied us the right again, that the school would be sued for denying us the right to have this club. And so I just want to say, you know, you want to be supportive to your students, and if possible, you know, go to the principal with them, or go to whoever's in charge of allowing them to have them clubs. And, you know, because it helps to have, you know, because a lot of administrators feel like you're just a student, so I can tell you anything, but it helps to have that adult to adult conversation. Also, my experiences with social workers, you want to steer away from imposing religious beliefs on students, especially if they have an adverse reaction to your conversation, like, oh, just pray about it, because all students, some students, because of the belief that, or the feelings of Christianity, that homosexuality is wrong, are questioning their religion themselves. And so you don't want to just say, oh, that you need to pray about it and, things like that. But certainly if there is a common religion, that could be helpful. Oh, yeah, and also, if you have several students who have come to you or come out to you, you definitely want to talk to them individually and see if they'll be okay with discussing it with other students. And so that way, if they have, social problems, they can talk about them with each other, and you can have them in your office, or even, a space for them to talk alone, but definitely introduce them to each other. And I will pass the mic to Jonathan.
Thank you. I envision her being a college professor one day. I can see it. I can see it. Thank you so much, Denisha, for sharing all of that and giving us some food for thought. The next panelist is a young man that I'm also very, very proud of. I was actually teaching, some of you know that I'm a guest lecturer at the University of Michigan, and I teach in women's studies. One of the classes that they had me teach is called LGBT Issues, and it was a half-semester kind of course. And so one day this young student comes up to me and says, you know what, I'm the founder of Detroit's first gay-straight alliance at Cesar Chavez Academy. It's in Detroit. It is a Detroit school, and although it is a charter school, it's right here in Detroit. They made the papers. They were in the Between the Lines. I don't know, he can tell us a bit more, but I read about it in the Between the Lines, and I didn't put two and two together, and he took my class, and I felt so honored by that. And we have stayed in touch since then. He is a college student now at the University of Michigan in Dearborn. And like I said, both of these young people here are pioneers, you all. I mean, we really got a lot of talent, creativity, and also concern for the community, and a lot of courage. So I want to introduce to you Jonathan Kosila.
All right. I'm actually going to come down here for a sec. This is a little bit unplanned, but I'm spontaneous. And I'm also 20, and I don't like sitting still for too long. And I want everybody to get a chance to look at me from head to toe. If I was a student at your school, if I was that quiet student sitting in a corner of a classroom, or if I was your child sitting at home in my room by myself, would you know that I was a gay male and that I was dealing with my sexuality? Probably not. I am the face of what a gay male student in your schools or in your homes is. And what I'm going to talk about first, beginning with, is my home life, because that's what ultimately shaped me starting the GSA at CCA. And CCA is a charter high school, but it is a public high school in Detroit. So anyone can attend it. It's not a DPS school, but it is still a public high school. It's not private. It's not a church school, anything like that. My experience coming out, just like most gay, lesbian students, children report, that feeling of difference, not fitting in with your peers, with your family, anybody else. I felt that all my life. Didn't really have too many male friends. I always felt more close to females. Not sure why. Go figure. So I would sit by myself up in my room, not really associate with my grandparents who I'm living with, or my siblings. Go to school, just go through the routine. I wasn't really too much into school. Just wasn't my thing back then. Once I got into middle school, 6th grade, I started putting two and two together with my feelings of isolation and my feelings of who I was beginning to become attracted to, and realized that, hey, I don't think I'm straight. And I was uncomfortable with it myself. I woke up every day wondering why, or sitting in class wondering why me, why does this have to happen to me? Why? Just why? Why can't I be like everybody else? Why can't I fit in? Why can't I be normal? And those are a lot of feelings that most kids feel. And when you're feeling those kind of feelings, you're not necessarily going to go up to somebody and ask them for help, because you yourself, you don't know what you're feeling yet. And you don't necessarily think everybody else is going to know what you're feeling either. So from that time in middle school, even until I went to high school, I was still dealing with it. And a little bit afraid. Couldn't talk to my grandparents. In my junior year, I met somebody who I became a little bit intimate with. And my grandmother went through some of my things and read some of my stuff online and realized that I was dating a male. And she confronted me one night when I came home from actually hanging out with this person. And she said, you know what, you're still my grandson, I still love you, and that's not going to change. And she took it upon herself to tell the rest of the family. I didn't ask her to do it. I wasn't going to do it. She told my grandpa. He said pretty much the same thing she said. But that was also it. And at the same night she confronted me on it, she also said, in her exact words, don't become one of those people who start doing these gay parades or these gay marches. And I told her I wasn't going to, but I knew that was a lie. But from that point on, I felt a little bit relieved, because I knew if I absolutely had to talk to her, not that she was that receptive to it, but I could somewhat fill her in briefly about what was going on. And in high school, when I got to high school, I didn't care. I was gay. I didn't care who knew it. I had kids coming up to me, asking me, saying that they think they're gay or they think they're lesbian, and they don't know what to do. And at that time, I was not comfortable with it, because I'm just realizing it. I'm not even sure what it's all about yet for myself, and people are wanting me to help them with it. So at that time, I approached the social worker at my high school, Ms. Ponce de Leon, and told her that I think it would be a good idea if we had some kind of club where students can come, or allies could come and talk about these kind of issues. And what she said to me was that she was all for the idea, but she was really too busy and pretty much left it on me to do. So I said, fine, do it myself. Got her to at least sponsor me and one more teacher to sponsor me. And in my mind, I wanted to make sure I did everything the right way and, you know, dotted every I, crossed every T. So I typed up a proposal for the Gay Straight Alliance and submitted it with the signatures of my sponsors and 2 student representatives, and gave it to the school leader, which our principal, we call a school leader in a charter school. And his reaction was kind of funny. He gave me that awkward look. He didn't know if he should agree to it or not, but at the same time, he knew that if he didn't, he was going to have problems. So he agreed to it on a conditional basis to see how it went over. And we pretty much started meeting that same week. Before we started meeting, Ms. Ponce de Leon, the social worker, had some people from the Triangle Foundation come in to give an informational meeting for parents, because they wanted the parents to know. This is a very small high school. Well, back then it was even smaller. It was about, at that time, 150, 200 students. So it was very, what the parents want, parents got to be there, you know. So they sent letters home informing all the parents about what was going on. And some concerned parents came to the school, and obviously some of them, you know, older fashioned, sticking to what they've been brought up, were opposing it. And pretty much what the school said is, you know, you may not be comfortable with it, but we have to do it. And pretty much what the meaning was to tell them what a gay straight alliance is. It's not anything about sex. It's not anything like that. It's to promote tolerance and acceptance and education. And I mean, we did a little bit of that in our first year, which was the only year I was there for it. But the most part of my tenure there was trying to organize it and like do the mission statement and motto, those kind of things. But we did have an event for National Day of Silence, which if you're not familiar with the National Day of Silence, people who participate will wear a pin or something on them that says, my name, am participating today in a National Day of Silence to show the silence that students go through, young people go through every day, not being able to turn to anybody for support in dealing with their sexuality. And we had a big outcome for that. And because of that, it allowed us to continue with our GSA. He took the whole conditional thing off, let us keep on going, kept on meeting every week. After time, the parents stopped opposing it. There was students there, like, are promoting for it. We very much were all over the place. We had flyers all over the school. I, as editor of the school paper back then, was putting articles in and what is a GSA and why are we doing this and why do we need this. And people were coming to the meetings. We also had flyers up. And I would walk through the schools and I would see stuff like on the flyers about fag this, fag that. And I was shocked. It's like, you know, I took the time to do this flyer and somebody is out here destroying it. So I stood around and I watched, and I finally found the young man who was doing it, and I actually went up and approached him on my own. And it turned out that the reason why he was messing up our flyers for the Gay Straight Alliance is because he indeed was a closeted homosexual himself. So, I mean, that's another thing. You can never know who it is. You can't assume you know who it is. You just have to be as receptive and open about talking to things and being educated. Can't close anybody out. If you see somebody that's sitting there, don't necessarily know what's going on in their life, maybe if it's just to say, hi, how's your day going, how's your week going, you need to be there, you need to be able to support them. And if they happen to say that they are gay, lesbian, bisexual, or questioning, you need to be able to know how to support them from that point on. And you also need to know that, like they said, it is our legal right to have these kind of organizations. And even though some students will probably just say, okay, you know, boo-hoo, we can't have it, that's bad. Some people will take the next step. Luckily, myself, I didn't have to do that. But at the same time of going through this, starting the GSA, I was still dealing with my personal stuff at home, which I don't live with my father. My birth mother has passed away, so I do live with my grandparents. My father and I were never that close, but we did have kind of a relationship. However, my cousin, my beautiful cousin who I love to death, when she found out that I was gay, she thought it was her responsibility to go run down the street and tell my dad. So one day, while I'm working at the job I had, which is at a pizzeria I worked at for 3 years, my dad comes in, and my dad knows everybody there because he used to work there. So he's talking to my manager, and he says, Jonathan is a fag, and God created Adam and Eve, not Adam and Steve, and I don't have a son anymore, to my managers, in front of all my coworkers. And from that point on, my father and I have not had any kind of relationship at all. I'm just recently being able to see my 4-year-old brother again after he wouldn't bring him around me at all, which probably was the most painful thing. I could live without seeing my dad, but my little brother, I wanted to see. And also, that caused problems for me at my job because, you know, it was a family-owned, not my family, but it was a family-owned place. Mostly everybody was family. I was like the only person. Ooh, hey. Wow. Did we get a disco ball or something? There we go. But, yeah, the restaurant was owned by this short white guy. Just very old-fashioned, very religious, and very sexist, racist, and homophobic. So all those three things put together, I mean, even just for African Americans, he would straight up say he will not hire an African American person in his restaurant. He will say, you're a girl, you will be on the phones. And of course, in my case, I was the fag. So that didn't make things very comfortable after that until finally issues with a coworker who tried to claim that I was sexually harassing him and issues with the manager who happened to be his aunt. I just decided to quit my job there, all thanks to my dad. But these are kind of things that gay, lesbian, bisexual, questioning youth deal with on a day-to-day basis because the coming out process and the coping process is a daily thing. It's never ending. You're always going to realize new things about yourself or new things about, you know, the community you live in, which was very evident at my time in high school or in other community organizations like the Detroit Hispanic Development Corporation, where I decided to come out to the youth group I worked with, and they didn't get it. They just didn't understand it, and it was very disheartening to know that in this day and age, our kids are growing up with no knowledge at all of why people are gay or what gay people do. So just things to keep in mind as you go back to your homes or you go back to your jobs. You never know. Never know. You never know if they're gay. You never know if they're bi, questioning. You never know what kind of other things they're going through. So just keep your minds open and keep yourselves receptive and continue to come to things like this that will better educate you on how to assist your students or your children. And I'm going to get back up to there because I don't want to talk too long. Thank you.
Thank you, Jonathan and Denisha. And they will be available to answer questions later. I also want to let you know, and we're just really, really fortunate to have history sitting right here in front of us here. A GSA that just got started and a GSA that was started several years ago, and we're hearing from someone who's gone through the process, you know, and can tell us about it, you know. So I thank them both for being here, and they'll be a part of our group activity in just a moment. I did want to let you know that there's a book on that table if you want to take a look at it. It's my copies, but you can always order it from the Michigan Department of Education, and it gives you all sorts of tips on how to deal with homophobia in the schools, dealing with peers, dealing with staff, GSAs, and all of that. And it's a great reference book, and all of you, each of you, should have a copy of that. There's also an event called the Day of Silence, which is sponsored by GLSEN, G-L-S-E-N, the Gay and Lesbian Education Network. And this happens in schools as a way to raise awareness about the presence of LGBTs in the world, let alone the school, and how we can become more understanding and sensitive to issues of orientation and identity. I want to take a moment to acknowledge that a lot of my colleagues are here today from the Clinic for Child Study. They're in the house. Hey, how y'all doing? It's good to see y'all here. And what we're going to do now is we want to take, we're going to respond to questions. I'm going to give the mic to Dr. Spivak, and he's going to field whatever questions you have at this moment. We're going to take a short seventh inning stretch a little bit. Maybe we can do the Cupid Shuffle together or something like that, kind of get our blood going and waking us up a little bit. But we want to spend about maybe 10 minutes on questions and answers, and then we're going to break up into groups, and we'll tell you how we're going to do that. Okay? So.
Let me just remind you to wait for a moment till you get the microphone when you have a question. So, go ahead.
Thank you, Doctor. I just want to mention that I used to assist a catering company over at Chavez Academy, and for the board meetings and so on. And Jonathan was a newspaper editor there, and he's a powerhouse. And I say that to say that he was involved in everything that went on, and had a voice. So you know, he's not the ordinary person that's out, but you know, I thought he was great then because he had good questions he posed. He was really involved in what was going on for the good of the students, and I'm really proud to hear him say what he's saying now, because I had no idea, and that's even more reason why institutions need to be receive the training, the sensitivity training, the diversity training that's necessary so they can better serve all the students.
Thank you. I want to make another comment, which I'm reminded of by your comment, which is we've been emphasizing the psychological effects of being stigmatized and mistreated and rejected. But these students, Denisha and Jonathan, are telling us something else too, that in the face of this, you also develop strengths. And you can use those strengths to better yourself and to better the people around you too. So it's not all about doom and gloom. There's something about trial by fire that promotes strength and growth, and we see the examples of that right here. So, another question? Yeah.
Yes, I wondered if somebody on the panel would comment on the legal issues. There's been several mentions made this morning about students have a legal right to form gay-straight alliances. I know it might be multidimensional because the faculty or the teachers in a school might not have the same kind of protections. But I just wonder if somebody would comment on some of those legal issues.
Every court case where there has been a court case about GSAs has always gone in the favor of the development of the GSAs. There was a famous case in Utah some years ago where the Salt Lake City, in order to avoid the formation of a GSA, banned all groups, because that was the only way they could legally ban a group, was to ban all groups. And then the parents were outraged by that because they wanted their kids to be able to go to the drama theater group, and they wanted their kids to go to the football games and their various groups. So eventually they had to succumb and start a GSA, and they lost a great deal of money in that fight. So
this is based on free speech you're talking about then?
And the fact that you can have, there's nothing about an organization. Frequently people say, you can't have this organization because you're promoting being gay, which is ridiculous. I was thinking about that when people were talking about it, that there was a case not too long ago in Birmingham of a coach who was having a sexual affair with a 15-year-old girl. So I would say that he was promoting something, but nobody was up in arms about, no, we should not have any coaches in schools. But there's an idea that somehow if you're gay, you're promoting your gayness rather than you're promoting tolerance, acceptance, and understanding. So there's no legal precedent for not allowing a group. And administrators simply say this out of the top of their heads. And as soon as they're confronted with a legal letter from an attorney quoting case law, then they usually fold. So.
In terms of protection, though, for teachers, there's still the fear, I would assume, that a teacher could be let go for affiliating or sponsoring a group, even though perhaps maybe another reason might be, developed.
Right. There's absolutely no protection for sexual orientation in this country. It's been a big issue that there's no legal protection for sexual orientation. So, but most sponsors are not gay. Most sponsors are brave and understanding and tolerant heterosexuals. Other questions?
I realize that education is key in changing attitude, but I wonder, when you mentioned that you went to a counselor, therapist, whatever it was, and they encouraged you to pray, or you mentioned the conversion therapy, do you ever encourage people to file complaints against people's professional licenses? I mean, it's a thought.
Since the American Psychological Association has come out against and said it's unethical to offer what's called reparative or conversion therapy, then you have a right to make a complaint, an ethical complaint against any therapist who tells you that that's what you should be doing for yourself.
And I'm just maybe encouraging people to maybe use that avenue.
Other questions? Okay. Do you want to move on to?
My question was, Dr. Robinson, was based on a presentation that I think Dr. Rita made. It's in reference to the type of sponsors. And that was a question that just popped in my mind. Does a better, and you may, I'm just going to ask a question. Is a person a better sponsor if they are sponsoring a gay or lesbian group, if they're gay, or do they just have to have a genuine interest, or both? What does statistics show in that regard?
Yeah, do you want to? Yeah, I don't know of any studies of whether one is better than the other. We really need to talk about the issue of allies and allyship. We miss that oftentimes. So oftentimes we think that we're inadequate or incompetent because we don't belong to a certain group. Well, I know psychologists have found that not to be true because in counseling and teaching and all of that, you don't have to be of the same race, for example, or the same culture in order to teach or to educate or to do therapy with. And I assume that and speculate that the same applies when it comes to sponsoring a GSA. Like Dr. Spivak was saying, that I would say most, and I'll speculate most of the GSA sponsors identify as heteroattractional. In fact, I went to a Michigan Association of Social Workers conference a couple years ago, went to a workshop by a woman who identified as heteroattractional, and she was a sponsor for the GSA at that school. And I would say she would be just as sensitive to the issues and educating herself at the same time. Now, a gay or lesbian person who was in that same role, they may not be as familiar with maybe some of the community issues, so it could go either way. And there's really, I would say, there's no reason to not sponsor a GSA. I'll just put that out there, regardless of your attraction orientation or your transgender identity. If you're open to learning, and and if you feel that there's a need there, and you're concerned about the safety of these students, and step on up to the plate. If there's anything else.
In one of the suits, the legal suits against the school, it was against the teachers as well as the school, because a teacher was observing a student being harassed and did nothing to stop it. And they have an obligation to stop harassment. So what a GSA is a gay-straight alliance. It's really meant to be an open group. That's why it's not limited to being gay or lesbian or by attraction or questioning. Or transgendered youth. It's really for alliances between straight people and gay people in order to bolster the sense of belonging and being integrated into your school rather than being separated or somehow isolated. So it's when you have people around you who can support you and protect you that you feel that you can stay in your school. So it's really, that's why I think most of the sponsors have been straight sponsors, because it's the alliance that counts. It's the having people who say, okay, you are integrated into our school. You're a part of our school. You're an important part of our school. You're not some separate, isolated group that we treat differently. And you're entitled to all the rights and benefits of being a student here. So.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Spivak. And now for the fun part.